Thrilled to talk to Kevin Love, who's doing Locker Room Talk. He's got episodes out there with Michael Phelps and Channing Frye and Paul Pierce. You can learn more about the Schick Hydro Man I Am campaign at www.schickhydro.com. Kevin, great to talk to you. Let's go back to the panic attack, because that seems like kind of the jumping off point here. Would it be fair to say that you wouldn't be doing the growth work that you're doing now and putting yourself out in the world if that hadn't happened?
Yeah, I mean, at least not now. I think in the time it was just such a huge thing that had happened to me, and not something that I thought I'd ever deal with, which then led into, seeking help and kind of looking in the mirror and saying, okay, I've dealt with anxiety and depression for quite a while in my life, or at least as long as I can remember. Didn't understand it when I was young, always, kind of tucked it away and put it to the side throughout my young adult life. And then it was only the last, year that I had started doing the work and, just organically had turned into me sharing my story and being vulnerable and trying to help not only myself, but a number of people, which then has turned into why I'm sitting here today with Schick Hydro and working with them and the Man I Am campaign and doing Locker Room Talk and starting the Kevin Love Fund. So it's just grown into something much bigger, and I never thought that I'd be sitting here today, after 29 years of going through what I've gone through, and now being able to affect so many people in a positive way. It's just great. And now being 30 years old and having my own fund and feeling like I know what I'm going to do after basketball, and that's impact people in a positive way is really special.
So this is super vulnerable stuff, but I'm just curious, as far as like what it was like for you as a kid, like what you were specifically dealing with. I don't know how much you're willing to share, but I'm just trying to sort of get a picture.
It's just I didn't quite understand it. I remember talking to my brother. We had flown to play Portland. I was out with my left hand last year at that time, and we had just met up in Portland where he lives and where I grew up. And I asked him kind of what he thought. He said we would kind of lose you and miss you for a couple of weeks, because I think I was dealing with something that I didn't quite understand, and it was, something that I wasn't really ready to either share or, admit that, especially around my peers, because I was afraid to be vulnerable around them at that age, or talk to, maybe a counselor or a teacher or a girlfriend about what I was going through. So it never surfaced. It was always something that I had set to the side, and I had done that through college and my career as well, where it just never came to a point where I was ready to deal with it. It took a really massive moment in my life on November 5th of last year to say, okay, this is something that I'm not going to continue to deal with. I want to improve my life, and now I'm able to not only improve mine but improve others.
Yeah. So kind of what I'm hearing, at least, alone and on your own, and then you have this moment where it literally scared the living Jesus out of you, like, am I going to die? And so, okay, if that's the case, well, then I guess I have to deal with this, because there's no other choice at this point.
And it wasn't only, it was that, but it was also everything had checked out at the hospital. So, and I put that in my article, I explained the panic attack and when it happened against the Atlanta Hawks on the 5th of November last year. Yeah. And it was something where I went to the hospital after the fact at the Cleveland Clinic, and everything checked out, and I just thought to myself, well, then what's going on? So that's when I had really realized there's a bigger issue here, and something that I'm really going to need to deal with.
So how do you think you made it to the NBA? Because there's a ton of talented guys out there athletically, but they don't have the mental side to focus and get themselves there. So it's amazing that you had all this going on, to me, and yet you made it to the NBA. You're an all-star. You're an NBA champion. All of that, even with the stuff that you had kind of shoved to the side.
I think I channeled it in a way that was I mean, listen, it's going to be detrimental if you don't, in one way or another. It's going to be detrimental or surface itself in different ways. Like for me, sometimes it was rage fits because, first of all, I didn't understand it and I couldn't share it in a way that was healthy, or it didn't surface in a way that was healthy. So I think I channeled it, at least the anxiety, in a way that was very positive. And for me, basketball and the court and the gym were always a way to escape and were a form of escapism for me. So the basketball court was just something I chased and continued to stay on the court and continue to, play travel basketball and just live in the gym. So I think that was how I was able to cope with it and manage it all this time. It was just the times when I was, left to my own or left to myself that were the tough parts.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think people miss that. Like, that's the best part about anxiety that we all have. It can be a motivator. It can get you out of bed. I'm going to the court, right? Yep,
absolutely.
Will you? I was super touched listening to you talk about your grandmother, and I'm just curious if you would sort of share what she meant to you, maybe a story that you would want people to know about your grandmother, why she's so much in your heart.
Oh, she's a simple woman. I think I'm still trying to find ways to have her legacy or her memory live on, just because she was a woman of simple tastes. She wasn't well traveled by any means. She lived next door to us in Portland growing up. So she really helped raise us, because my parents had worked a lot growing up, so they weren't home very much, and she had helped raise us. But she was just a woman of very simple taste. Like I said, lived vicariously through her family, and just a very loving, caring woman. Like, she was definitely a throwback to what seemed like a better, more simple time. So I think that was the biggest thing about my Grandma Carol, was that she just remembered. She kept in mind what was important, and also, for me, just allowed me to, think about what really mattered in life. And I think in so many ways, and at least in this walk of life, and even in high school and college, in my first few years in the league until she passed, like, I had, become very jaded and lost sight of, maybe those little simple things in life that probably led to having more anxiety. So she was just a very special woman, and a lot of people talk about their grandmothers or grandfathers having such a positive influence on them, and my grandma was, in many, many ways, in a large part, one of those people.
Did she want you to be an NBA player?
She wanted me to just be happy. That was the beautiful thing about it. She didn't care about much else. She just was, she just loved you. She was old school. She would put a picture in a card and write you a long letter every birthday, every holiday. She was just super, super old school, had old school values. And I obviously missed my time with her, but that was another thing when I was, away, whether it be at UCLA or I guess it would have been Minneapolis. It was, I just wasn't able to see her or spend much time with her, whether it be in the summer in Portland or Southern California as well.
Yeah. So all right, let's move this forward a little bit. The journey you're on here, there's no finish line, right? You don't ever get to, quote, win or lose. I guess, like, from my perspective, it's that you get to feel more like yourself along the way, and maybe you get some energy from that. But, like, how does an athlete like you sort of embrace that, knowing that you're on this journey and there's no end to it?
Well, I think that's the beauty of it, that there's no end to it. It's going to be, listen, if a lot of people, dealing with, mental wellness and depression, anxiety, and other issues, I think getting to the next day in some cases is a win. So the fact that this is never ending, and starting a fund and working with people like Schick Hydro and the Movember Foundation, and getting to see other athletes that Michael Phelps, who's potentially, if not the greatest American athlete of all time, he's sitting at the table. And, just seeing him spreading the positive message that not only empowers me, but makes me feel better to affect, any demographic or, gender, socioeconomic status, sexual preference. And I'll continue to say that this affects each and every person, if not directly, indirectly, and affects somebody in their life one way or another. And I think that's the beauty of it. And for me, yes, it's allowed me to settle in and make me feel more like myself, but also a big part of that is knowing that I'm going to affect people not only for what I do on the basketball court, but what I do off of it and after basketball. I feel like I found a big part and a chunk of my life what I'm going to be working towards.
Yeah, I watched the video, you sitting down with Phelps and chanting Frye, and I mean, what's that like for you? Okay, now I'm having this conversation, and yes, these guys are open to come and sit down with me, but it's still super vulnerable, and now you're kind of leading the discussion.
No, what I think is amazing and what Schick did such a good job of as well is picking who was, who I was interviewing and who we were sitting down and talking to, because Michael Phelps has dealt, and it's pretty universally well known what he's dealt with and, what he's done in the swimming pool. So just to hear his story and hear who he is different than, say, Channing Frye, who, has dealt with the passing of his two parents within a month that you saw on the video. And you saw that he had also dealt with, potentially not playing again with his heart. Into Paul Pierce, being stabbed 9 times and having so much social anxiety and going out in crowds and not being able to move freely. I mean, each and every one of those guys looks at probably masculinity a different way, and it then is able to impact, I feel like, even more people, because they're sharing a conversation which is definitely independent to them, and they're sharing their own stories in a different way, but we're all, sitting there having the conversation about very similar things. So it's there's a lot of beauty in it that each person has a different way of explaining it in a different story.
See, I think you're getting to a new model of manhood here, Kevin, that like the people are sort of touching on. Like the old model, toughen up, get out there, do it, nothing bothers you. But now, like, an actual man is somebody who can actually show their vulnerability, talk about what's going on inside, maybe have a tear come out here or there, or lots of them. I mean, that's really what we're going for.
Yeah, just being able to have that conversation and not suppress it, because that, at least for me, like, I'm a guy that has a pretty long fuse, and when I suppressed it for so long, that just continues to build up to where, like I said, when I was young, this happened and manifested itself into a panic attack. And when I was younger, it was rage fits, and the depression hits, and I'm only motivated when it comes to the basketball court, and so that's just a fine line to walk and extremely unhealthy. So I think further in that conversation and continuing to beat down the stigma that's surrounded with all of this is very key. So I think once you kind of break that open, so many good things are going to spill out of this.
Yeah, expressing anger, being direct. Kevin, great to talk to you. Appreciate all the work you're doing and what you're going to do in the future. And Schick Hydro, awesome stuff creating this whole platform for you. It was great to be with you today.
Yes, sir. Good talking to you. Thank you.